Hello, my name's Ari. I produce music under the name Samui. This is a walkthrough of my song The Rules, available on all major streaming platforms. This walkthrough assumes you have basic knowledge of music production. If you like this content, please like and subscribe for more. Let's get into it. Let's start right here at the beginning. The intro contains sounds which appear later in the song. I'm either fading them in or I have a filter that's opening up. So the first thing we'll talk about is this. This started life as a citrus, where if you, on any operator, turn this knob up to full, every note becomes white noise. And then I processed it with a bandpass filter and automated the cutoff. And for the intro, I just took it up. We also have distortion, compression, a little bit of parallel delay and reverb. Okay, let's talk about the beat. Pretty basic beat. I got a big old dubstep kick and a snare here. You can see I've clipped the hell out of these, so they sound very punchy. Hi-hat. Then on top of that, I've added, which is actually just me beatboxing terribly, and then processed EQ, a gate, so that in between the percussion elements it's completely muted. I added a soothe on here to pick out some of the harsher frequencies. Then I'm distorting it, multi-band compression again, auto pan to kind of make it stand out more in the stereo field. Then a small amount of reverb. I use send here to automate the volume. I don't like automating the volume sliders here because it's very difficult to do mixing and volume adjustments later on. If you just put something like send, you can just control the volume of the instrument without touching this slider. And together they sound cymbal and some risers with the noise. Now the main bass in the verse. This is vital bass. I'm FMing a sine wave with a triangle wave and then low pass filtering it. A little bit of distortion, which is also controlled by the same LFO, and a little bit of, took out some of the mids. You have the vocals. The big smoke that got locked down. Everybody lives in the... I took out the lows, which I wasn't planning on using anyway. All the gaps in between the vocals are muted with a... In the big smoke that got locked down, everybody lives in the... Then I have a de-esser. In the big smoke that got locked down. Sidechain reverb and delay and parallel chorus. In the big smoke that got locked down, everybody lives. This gives that effect where when the vocals are present, it cuts the reverb and delay. The vocals really cut through, it makes them sound much louder. Push that through a compressor, it really accentuates the effect. In the big smoke that got locked down, everybody lives in their own little town. Then compression, a little bit of reverb. Actually, this reverb isn't active. This is only used over here. Oh, outside they have to cover their face. A very important thing to try and achieve in your song. Try and make the build-up and the drop sound coherent. One very easy way to do that is if you have a main melody in your drop, use it somewhere in your intro or your build-up, and that will give the ears an idea of the melody before it arrives. In this song, I achieved that by having this little piano playing the main melody, which is in the drop in the verse. I wanted to give it a little pre-warning that the piano sound is coming in. So I did the old trick of reversing the piano, recording a huge reverb, and then reversing that reverb. You get this. The end of the verse goes into this little build-up before the drop. Following rules never was my style. I completely changed the drum beat for here, bringing up the pitch of the clap. In this point, everything is rising. A a bunch of different transition effects. Also, I took the last word of the verse and repeated it with some effects. Frequency shifter, big crusher, compression, reverb that increases in feedback and mix, auto pan which increases over time, high pass filter, and I think I EQ'd that to be at the top of the mix. And again, I'm using Fruity Send to control the volume. Some impacts at the bottom here. Very quiet, but you kind of hear them. This vocal that I recorded separately. Following rules never was my style. 2 copies of it, 2 different takes. This guy here is actually one of the synths in the drop. Now let's move to the drop. Start with the beat. Same kick as the verse, but the snare is different. This kind of dubstep snare, I've tuned it down and I've clipped it, and all I really have on it is a little bit of reverb just to give it some presence. I've added the same percussion loop. This is the main rhythmic bass. So this is a Vital bass. The main gist of it is this Vital sine wavetable, which I'm vocoding and bending. And then I'm filling out the bottom end with this sub, which I'm turning up the volume of as this loses sub. Formant filter, phaser, some low pass filtering, then distorting and compressing it. The detail in this bass was not really important. This is kind of just a reinforcement bass. It's going to fill out the background whilst the lead is playing. It's the main lead. I dropped a pluck instrument into here and then played the main melody. I have a high pass filter and the rest of the sound is achieved by phaser, playing with the phaser. On its own, it's very weak. So I added this. Exactly the same melody, 2 octaves lower, I think. It's this Harmer which has Hertz mode, unison. Didn't really need to do a great deal with it after that. Just some compression, a small amount of reverb. Pushed it slightly to the back of the mix by turning up the mix knob here, so that the main lead can sit on top. And then this was just missing the very, very top end. And over the whole thing, that sounds... Yeah, it doesn't sound very prominent, but you would hear it if it wasn't there. Makes a big difference. This is a Vocodex bass. I started by saying some gibberish. And then chopping that up into... I created this carrier. I am using the Hertz mode again to get this metallic-y sound, and I've distorted it and compressed it. It's giving me all the frequencies, and this is very important when you're using a bass with Vocodex. How it works is it takes the sound of the carrier, analyzes the sound of the modulator, my voice, and takes frequencies away from the carrier. So it's important that the carrier is rich in harmonics to start with, so that when you take the frequencies away, there's something to take away. And then I automated the pitch and the bandwidth. You see compression. And then the controlled distortion is really where the bulk of the sound comes from. I'm going to show a full detailed video about what this is and how it works. And parallel reverb, chorus, and flanger. Compressed it all one more time. And final EQ to take out the lower end, which I didn't need because I have the sub and the reinforcing bass here. Let's talk about this Reese. Pretty standard Reese, which I achieved with 2 voices of unison, 0 on the phase and the pan knobs, 0 on the phase randomness. And then I played with the filters, the phaser. The phaser is what gives that lasery sound, and the 3-octave drop in pitch. I bounced that down. Got distortion, this plugin M Freeform Phase, which is free. With this graph you see here, it does exactly the same as disperser. Phaser, flanger, filter, that happening, another compressor, reverb, auto pan, and then a final EQ. For the second Vocodex bit, the same kind of thing, but I've changed the notes here. The vocal chops, the pitch bend, the bandwidth, just basically the same thing, but with variation in every one of these elements. Same again with the Reese here. I'm adjusting the unison pitch thickness, the high pass, low pass filter, and playing around with the phaser mix and width and offset. I mentioned that I would go through this. This is actually just copied from this Vocodex bits in the drop. I've just simplified it so it is 1 note bend and 1 vocal chop and a very small change in pitch, bandwidth, and the high pass filter. And I just copied this all over the song. Different note, different pitch bend, and it gives a different result each time. The second verse is pretty much the same as the first. These vocals, and they're pretty basic. Distortion, compression, phaser, chorus, reverb, and then I EQ'd them. And then more vocals come in. I've double tracked all of them. There isn't a pre-drop just like the first drop, so the drums kind of just stop. I've got this high bit introducing the drop again. I brought in those impacts. And then the second drop is just like the first drop. Different notes, different variations in the vocal chops, different modulator pitch shifts, different bandwidth, and you get a completely different thing, really. The end of this Reese bass is an extremely low note. I recorded that, clipped it, and processed it as much as I could, and then I get that sound. I'm actually bending down to that extremely low note so that you get the impression that those clicks are slowing down. And then I distorted it, put the disperser on it, compressed it again. Reverb, chorus, and flanger. Auto pan, a filter, high pass filter. This is actually very important, this high pass filter. And then a final EQ. The last one, I have the same Reese with the same watery effect, but again, just slightly different variations of the notes and the filters and unison pitch thickness and phaser offset mix and